This happened back in 1985, a year that changed far more in my life than I ever expected. My name is Daniel Wright, and I was 24 years old at the time. I had been working in the railway department for barely 2 years when, out of nowhere, I received a promotion. Promotions feel good. Transfers don't. I was posted to a small industrial town called Ravenhill Junction, a quiet place. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. A town where nights arrived early, and after midnight, only the wind moved, sliding across cold metal tracks. The department gave me a residential quarter on the outskirts. A small house, isolated but manageable, as they called it. At first glance, it felt harmless enough, clean, silent, tucked away from the city. But even on day one, there was something off about that silence, like a silence that didn't belong to a living town. Every day, on my way back from duty, I passed a church, an old weathered building that sat alone near the road. The first time I saw it, I noticed peeling paint, a tilted wooden cross on top, and windows so dark they looked like hollow eyes. It wasn't the kind of church people visited. It wasn't the kind of place you'd hear hymns from. It was the kind of place that looked abandoned, but watched you anyway. But I brushed it off. New places always have strange corners. That night, sitting alone in my new quarter, I missed my wife. She didn't move with me. She stayed back at our hometown until my posting became permanent. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. Occasionally, the front door creaked, not from the wind, but like someone pressed it gently, then let go. Still, I blamed it on the wood, the weather, the long day. When you're newly promoted, you try to act tougher than you feel, or at least pretend you are. The next morning, on my way to the station, I passed the church again, and something was different. The cross was straighter, not perfectly aligned, but definitely not leaning the way it had the previous day. Maybe someone fixed it, I told myself. But deep inside, there was a small, sharp feeling, like a fingernail lightly scratching the back of my mind. Something about that church wasn't normal, and this was only the beginning. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly, if I'm being honest. My duty at the station was simple: managing schedules, checking reports, inspecting late-night arrivals. Ravenhill Junction wasn't a busy station. Some nights I would stand on the platform for 10, 20 minutes without hearing a single sound except the wind pressing against the metal roofs. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt watched. Every evening on the way back, I passed the same church. And every evening, something about it was different. Not dramatic changes, nothing you'd notice unless you really paid attention. The cross on the roof was leaning again, but not the same direction as before. One of the windows appeared boarded up. I was almost sure it hadn't been the previous day. The front door stood slightly open, just an inch, like someone inside forgot to close it properly. I slowed my motorcycle each time I passed, trying to make sense of it. A church that looked abandoned shouldn't change this often. Buildings don't fix themselves. Doors don't open on their own, unless someone was inside. But I never once saw lights, never heard a voice, never saw footprints in the dirt outside. It was like the church had a life that only moved when no one was watching. One evening after duty, I reached the church and saw something that stopped my breath. The front door wasn't just open slightly, it was wide open. Inside, everything was dark, completely still. And on the signboard outside, something new was written. "Tonight's sermon, he sees who passes." The words looked fresh, wet even. But Ravenhill didn't have a priest. The church wasn't active. Everyone in town told me it had been closed for years. So who wrote it? And who was the sermon for? I tried to convince myself it was kids playing a prank. But that explanation sat wrong in my chest. Children don't write things like that. And sermons don't change every day in a church that shouldn't be alive. That night, when I reached my quarter, a strange chill hung in the air, thicker than the usual silence. As I locked the door behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the church's door had been open for me. It felt personal, intentional. A warning maybe, or an invitation. Either way, it stayed in my mind long after I lay down. and long after the creak outside my bedroom door returned at 2:30 a.m. I don't remember when I stopped treating the strange things as coincidences. Maybe it was the seventh day. Maybe it was the silence in my quarter that felt too heavy, like it was waiting for something. But I know exactly when the fear became real. It was the night I returned late from the station. That evening, a freight train arrived delayed by nearly an hour. By the time I finished filing the report, the station was dead silent. Even the usual night guards had gone home early. When I stepped outside, the breeze felt colder than normal, sharp enough to sting my face. The kind of cold that doesn't belong in August. The road to my quarter was lit only by my motorcycle's headlamp, but the beam looked weaker than usual, like the darkness was thicker. As I approached the church, something felt wrong immediately. The building stood at the side of the road exactly where it always did, but this time, one of the windows was glowing from inside, a faint golden light, weak, flickering, like someone was moving with a candle. I slowed the bike almost without realizing. I'd never seen light inside it, not once. The church had been dead for years. Everyone said so. So who was inside at 11:45 p.m.? Curiosity pulled me closer. The open door from earlier in the week was now closed again, but something new stopped me cold. The sermon board had changed again. Fresh words, written in the same uneven handwriting. He knows you watch. My stomach folded in on itself. Watch? Who was watching who? I stared at the church for a long minute. The wind tugging at my jacket, the candlelight flickering like someone was moving inside the hall. Then the light went out. Instantly. No fade, no movement, just gone. And I genuinely felt someone looking back at me through the darkness behind that window. I didn't stay another second. I kicked the bike and sped out of there so fast the engine almost choked. By the time I reached home, my nerves were stretched thin. I locked the front door, took off my shoes, and walked toward the kitchen to pour water. And then I froze. A voice, soft, female, from the bedroom. John! My heart flipped in my chest. It sounded like my wife. But she was in Bradford, at our family home. She hadn't even seen my quarter yet. I stood still, breath locked in my throat. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe the stress. Maybe... John, come here. No, that wasn't imagination. That was too clear. Too real. My hands shook as I reached for the bedroom door. But I didn't open it. Not yet. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. Then a soft exhale. Right on the other side. I stumbled back, pulse hammering in my ears. My wife wasn't here. No one else had a key. The quarter was too isolated for someone to sneak in. So who was inside my bedroom? I moved to the living room, heart racing, trying to convince myself not to panic. Then it happened. The same creak I heard every night. The same soft, slow bending sound. But this time, it wasn't outside the bedroom door. It was behind me. Right by the hallway. I turned slowly. Too slowly. The hallway was empty. Silent. Still. But the temperature had dropped so fast my breath was fogging. I backed up until I hit the wall, trying to steady my breathing. This quarter didn't feel like my home anymore. It didn't feel like a place I could survive the night in. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Because something inside me told me the church and this house were not separate problems. They were connected. And whatever waited inside that church was no longer staying inside. I barely slept after hearing that voice. Every sound in the quarter felt amplified. The ticking clock, the wooden frame settling, the wind scraping the windows. By midnight, the silence felt alive. I kept telling myself the same thing. You're tired, John. You're imagining things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I sat on the living room sofa, lights dim, breathing slow, trying to calm myself. Then something happened that pushed every thought out of my head. The bedroom door moved. Not much. Just a slight shift. A soft click like someone inside was testing the handle. I froze. Then it clicked again. Quiet. Slow. Deliberate. My mouth went dry. My fingers numbed. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stayed rooted to the floor. If someone was inside, they hadn't broken the door. They hadn't forced a window. They hadn't made a sound coming in. They were already here, like they'd been here longer than I had. I stood up slowly, controlling my breath, gripping the arm of the sofa for balance.
"Who's there?"
The words stuck in my throat.
No answer.
Just another quiet creak. Not from the door this time, but from the floorboards, as if someone had taken a step toward me on the other side. My vision blurred with panic. I took a cautious step backward. The hallway behind me stretched into darkness. The house felt too long.
Longer than it should be.
Like the quarters had shifted just a little while I wasn't looking. I took another step.
Then I heard breathing. Soft, steady, female.
My wife's breathing, except she wasn't here.
Maybe stupidity.
Maybe instinct. But I walked toward the bedroom door. Each step sounded like it belonged to someone else. My heartbeat felt dull, distant, disconnected. I reached the door, trembling, and placed my hand on the knob. Cold metal.
Too cold.
I pushed the door open slowly. The room was dark, completely still. But on the left side,
near the corner, I saw a shape, a figure. A woman standing perfectly still, her back turned toward me.
My heart plummeted.
"Sarah?"
I whispered my wife's name before my brain could catch up. The figure shifted slightly, and in that single movement,
every hair on my body rose, because the motion wasn't natural.
It was stiff,
smooth, like clothing moving before the body inside it.
She turned her head a fraction, just enough for me to see the outline of her cheek. And then I saw it, the veil.
White, thin,
translucent. A nun's veil.
Exactly like the nun I had glimpsed inside the church window on my first morning here.
My stomach twisted violently. This wasn't my wife. This was something wearing her shape, her voice, her stillness. But there was nothing human inside that silhouette. She moved again, slow, impossibly smooth, turning toward me.
I didn't wait to see the face. I didn't want to know what was behind the veil. A scream tore out of my throat before I even realized I was screaming.
I stumbled backward, nearly tripping, then sprinted toward the front door. The hallway felt longer again.
Stretching, narrowing, shifting, like the house itself didn't want me to leave.
I slammed into the door, unlocked it with shaking hands, and threw myself outside into the cold night air.
I didn't stop running.
The station was the only place with lights, people, anything real. I ran the whole way until my legs burned and my lungs hurt. When I reached the office, the night guard stared at me like I was insane.
Sweaty, breathless, white as a sheet. I didn't explain.
I just said,
"I'm not staying in that quarter another night."
He didn't ask why.
Maybe he saw the fear in my eyes. Maybe he already knew the stories.
The ones nobody tells new officers. Before sunrise, I wrote my resignation letter.
Short, uneven, hands shaking so badly the pen scratched the paper. I left the town that same morning.
Never went back.